Hey, what's up you guys? Bloody Jacob here to bring you another set of action movie reviews. Steven Seagal action movie reviews. Specifically, if that weren't obvious enough already by the thumbnail, today we're going to be talking about The Glimmer Man, released in 1996, along with a couple other direct-to-video releases of Seagal's from the 2000s, which are Kill Switch, released in 2008, and finally Maximum Conviction, also starring Stone Cold Steve Austin, released in 2012.
My turn.
Jacob here, meeting my icon, Catherine Isabel here.
Bloody Jacob, your sexy, awesome, exclusive content. Butt down there.
And we're going to start off by talking about The Glimmer Man, again released in 1996, starring Steven Seagal and Keenan Ivory Wayans. It's about a former government operative renowned for his stealth, Jack Cole, who is now a Los Angeles police detective. When a series of horrible murders occur in the metro area, he's assigned to the case along with tough-talking fellow cop Jim Campbell, played by Wayans. Along the way, the two men clash. They gradually become effective partners as they uncover a conspiracy linked to the killings, which also involves terrorism and organized crime. Shocker. But yeah, The Glimmer Man was another one of those, I guess, if you want to say golden era, Seagal movies. More specifically, still at a time when Seagal was at least in, slim shape. Sort of within that same time range, or not too far off from, his other most successful movies like Under Siege and everything. And I was looking forward to this movie a fair bit, at least. I mean, I was born in 96 for one thing. But, there's also a story attached to this, movie's production as well, as told a bit by, let's see, I just want to get to the cast list here. I lost that, apparently. But yeah, as told by Stephen Tobolowsky, who plays one of the, more crazed characters in the film. Basically, Seagal had this, sort of spiritual awakening or crisis, and he, really felt bad about killing so many characters in this movie. He wanted, this actor's character to survive, but the actor is able to appeal to his religious beliefs and say, "Oh, if you kill me now, I'll be released and reincarnated in, in sort of a, new life, essentially. So it's all right, Stephen, it's all right." And then they went through with the scene. Later, tried to edit in some audio, which made it seem like the guy could still be alive, but obviously they didn't go with that cut. So yeah, that's a bit interesting, considering how many people he kills on screen, and the rest of his filmography later on, and movies he had more control over. But nonetheless, this is still, I think, a decent Seagal movie, probably one of his better ones. I wouldn't say it's as good as, again, some of his more classic ones like Under Siege, Hard to Kill, Above the Law, ones like that, maybe. Well, maybe, I don't know. I might be able to put it over Above the Law, I'm not sure. It kind of depends on my mood. I will say, to Seagal's credit, there is a bit more personality to him in this movie than usual, at least a tad. It's like even some of the more critical reviews you can see of Steven Seagal's movies on YouTube. There's one in particular, in one of his scenes with Wayans, they actually achieve some decent chemistry together, because even some other random reviews on YouTube have recognized, did Seagal just show an emotion? And yeah, he does. Some of it feels a bit more natural in this. You kind of have to see it to know it, but there's some clever lines about deer penis, believe it or not. And I felt like Lyons was a pretty natural sort of cast for the role too. I thought he did a fine job, and there's some decent fight scenes in this as well. And Seagal actually gets hit, a few times. Most of them in passing, sort of, a few hits that are over in about 3 seconds before Seagal kills the guy. But he's actually in the face at one point. He's actually bleeding, so that's a rare sight for sure. There's a slick move he makes with this, credit card of his, and that part was a little off. But the end fight in this one where he's surrounded by these, or when he takes out some of these, crime members in this restaurant, I think, were actually, pretty fun to watch. Seagal destroys them, but, they make it a little bit more sort of, I don't know if I want to say engaging, but, it felt like they were trying to make it a little less tedious, I guess, or a little less repetitive than usual, perhaps. So I didn't have a bad time with this at all. I mean, obviously it was predictable, as all Seagal movies are, but that's not we're not really watching these movies with intricate plots. Seagal's personality, if he has one, is more noticeable and signature than ever in this movie. So yeah, not a bad time, although I would say it's not really one of his most memorable movies either. I think it's about the mid-high tier for his films, I think. So yeah, if I'd rate the Glimmer Man, I'd give it probably about a C, maybe drifting in a C plus range. So like a 70, maybe like a 76, I'd say. Perhaps, I'm not entirely sure. 77. I could talk about that all night. And then we're going to change gears a little bit. Next up, we're talking about Kill Switch, which came out in 2008. It's about a psychotic killer ravaging Memphis, Tennessee, by murdering young women, and Detective Jacob Stillwell is on the case. Known as the resident tough cop due to his aggressive tactics, he gets knocked sideways when his girlfriend becomes one of the murder victims. His partner, Storm Anderson, in tow, Jacob casts the rules aside and infiltrates the seedy criminal underworld of the city, looking to avenge his lover's death and put an end to the killings. Now, I had an interesting experience with this movie, I will say. I ended up buying it on Blu-ray for one thing, so if that tells you anything more about where my mind's at than anything else. I started watching on Tubi on my phone, when a family trip recently is sort of, drifting elsewhere, I put the headphones in, and there you go, get a little escapism. But then I finished it at home, I got it on the Tubi app, which has sort of a lot of, random, action martial arts flicks that you guys should probably check out. I knew what I was getting with this, as you should with any Seagal movie, really. But I oddly kind of like this movie. I know it was edited to crap, which it really is. There's a lot of random close-ups in most of the fight scenes. There's a lot of repeated shots of Seagal's expression. A lot of obvious stunt work where it's shot from behind him and you can tell it's not the guy's natural hair, and clearly not Seagal. I guess this may have been done to sort of beef up or maybe elongate the fight scenes a bit more than usual. And hey, if they're going to use a stunt double, why not make the fight scenes, have a bit more to them? I don't know. It's a shame, and they weren't really any crazy, moments or choreography really. So I don't know why Seagal couldn't have just done most of it on his own. But Seagal's character anyway is knocked to the ground at one point. He's being kicked and everything. So that's again a bit more than you might usually see in a Seagal movie in terms of him, facing any sort of difficulty or taking damage whatsoever. Granted, he rises up in about 5 seconds, but still. There's a vibe to this I liked, I guess. Being a horror movie fan, I liked it actually being a serial killer investigation. It talks about another case they investigated about this cannibal that was found eating a clown and everything. They actually show a little bit of it. So there's a bit of a vibe and an edge to this movie I kind of liked, I guess. Now the editing, again, it is choppy in those fight scenes, but nonetheless, I guess I was just in the right mood at the time. the ending is a bit weird. If you guys have seen it, you know what I mean. The very last scene, it's kind of out of nowhere, and it takes away from some of the any of their, some of the respect for Seagal's character, if he had any at all. It just doesn't really line up that well. So it's like, okay, is he our protagonist really? Because this is kind of odd. But hey, I guess any character played by Seagal is a flawed character, right? But yeah, not bad at all. There's something I liked about it. I mean, you had, let's see. Yeah, he had Isaac Hayes in one of his last film roles. I thought his partner is decent, played by Chris Thomas King. Of like more of them two instead of him just being investigated by the FBI woman all the time. You had Mark Colley, who had a bit role in one of my favorite movies of all time, the Tom Jane Punisher movie from 2004. And then you had Philip Powich as the Lazarus Killer. And I thought it was odd because we're supposed to buy, Mark Colley's character as more of the serious threat, but Skull actually has more trouble apprehending or killing Lazarus, so it is a bit confusing. But it is what it is with that. And Lazarus, once you see him in person, I think they could have casted someone a bit more intimidating for that. But there's a couple decent chase moments, I guess, and I guess it was the vibe that made it a little bit different. It didn't feel like just a basic, Seagal going after a gang sort of movie. I like the serial killer aspect and what edge they managed to incorporate that at all. So again, I liked it, but editing was crap in bits, and it could have definitely benefited from some sort of more, dynamic supporting characters, I believe, as well. So yeah, sorry if I'm jumping around a bit right now, but it is very late, but I did want to get this video out. So if I had to rate Kill Switch, I'd probably give it, I understand what it is, I'd probably have to rate it about a D+, so like a 67, 68%. But if I'm in the exact right mood, like when I was actually watching it initially, I'd probably give it like a C, C-. So like a 71, 73% or something, who knows. But I don't think it's his worst. I think it's much better than Submerged, Mercenary for Justice, and some others. So what do you guys thought about this one especially? And last but not least, we're going to be talking about Maximum Conviction, which again also starred Stone Cold Steve Austin, wrestling legend, and his slew of action movies that he did in the early 2010s and everything. And this one is about Tom, I swear the name's changed depending on where you're reading them. I know he went by Cross in the movie, but yeah, Steven Seagal, he's a former Black Ops operative. His partner, Manning, okay, now Manning is his name, I've seen everywhere for Steve Austin's character, are forced to defend a prison when a force of mercenaries assaults the facility to find two women, and he basically got a little conspiracy weave there with how the two women are connected to it, both kind of different reasons. And you get basically a straightforward movie. This is another one I watched on Tubi, that I also now own on Blu-ray. And I actually thought it was a fine time. I mean, Steve Austin's presence and charisma definitely helped. I mean, I felt like there could have been some more clever dialogue written between the two, and they don't really share a lot of screen time, unfortunately. But when they do, Steve Austin definitely helps. You feel like you can get sort of a chemistry or a decent rapport with about anyone, because of his experience in front of the camera and wrestling and everything. I think that carried over a bit. And Steve Austin is a believable action star on his own, I think. And he actually has a pretty cool knife action scene, and he's not afraid to get his ass kicked and come back even harder. Unlike Seagal, who again is an invincible force in this movie and faces very, very little to no opposition. But Seagal isn't completely terrible in this either. I mean, I was watching it for him, honestly, but it's made it a bit easier going through it with Steve Austin. Seagal wasn't too bad. There was a couple decent shootout scenes. He's constantly carrying around a very large machine gun. It's very straightforward, but it really isn't a chore to get through or anything. I mean, there's nothing overly special about it. It's very familiar. It feels I don't want to say secluded. The movie didn't really have the right amount of tone to it that I think it could have, in someone else's hands. But it had a very simple premise, and I think it did enough with that. Or all that you would expect it to, anyway. And he also had Brendan Foster, who does incorporate some of his martial arts into it. He does get a pretty central standout scene towards the end of the film. I didn't have a problem with it. I mean, I thought it was a good time. I didn't feel like I was wasting my time. Maybe it's not saying all that much. That's my biggest praise for the movie. But Seagal was competent. The two women I thought were fine, the actresses that played them. I will say I think Steph Song as Samantha, I think that was the right one, was a bit more, there's a bit more entertainment value with her character. I think the other one was a touch bland for me. We had Michael Pierre as the bad guy, who I think is convincing. I think he has the right look and everything. I've seen him in some other things. He was in the Dolph Lundgren movie Direct Contact, for instance. Here he works, doesn't get a lot to do though, and then he's kind of quickly, disposed of, as you'd expect by the end of the movie, but it is what it is with that. So, yeah, Maximum Conviction, not too bad. The Glimmer Man is probably the best movie of this set, but this might be the one I'd watch again first for some reason. So if I had to rate it, I'm giving it about a 78%. That might be kind of high. I feel like it's kind of high, but not a terrible time. And there you go. My most recent set of Steven Seagal reviews. Let me know what you guys thought about each of these. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, like, subscribe. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.